A man who kidnapped and murdered a doctor in cold blood sat down for his final meal on Earth and asked for one thing. Not a feast, not a steak, not anything you would expect from a man who had lived his life with so little regard for the lives of others. One olive, with the pit still inside. And when the guards asked him why, what he said stopped everyone in that room cold. Welcome to Epic Stories. If you are new here, this is the channel where real history gets told the way it deserves to be told. Not like a textbook, like a story. If you have been here before, you already know we go deeper than the surface. Today we are going very deep. This is the story of Victor Harry Feguer, a drifter, a killer, and somehow, at the very end of his life, the author of one of the most quietly haunting final acts in American criminal history. Stay with me, because nothing about this story ends the way you think it will. It was the summer of 1960 in Dubuque, Iowa, a quiet Midwestern city. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and trusted their neighbors without thinking twice about it. Into that city walked a 24-year-old man from Michigan with no job, no real plan, and a history of trouble that stretched back to his teenage years. He rented a room in a rundown boarding house, kept mostly to himself, and one afternoon, he sat down with a local phone book and began making calls. He was going through it alphabetically, calling doctors one by one. His story was always the same. There was a woman who needed urgent medical attention. Could you come? It was an emergency. Most doctors declined or redirected him, but one answered. One came. His name was Dr. Edward Bartles. He was 34 years old. He had a family, and when the call came in about a woman in distress, he did what doctors do. He went. There was no woman. What happened next happened quickly. Victor Feguer was waiting. He pulled out a gun. He forced Dr. Bartles into his own car and made him drive across state lines into Illinois. Somewhere in that drive, it became clear that whatever Feguer had wanted, whether it was drugs from the doctor's medical bag or something else entirely, it was not going to end well for Edward Bartles. The doctor's body was found days later in a cornfield in Illinois. A single gunshot wound to the head. Feguer was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama, a few days after that, trying to sell the doctor's car. He had no title papers. A man named James Alford got suspicious and called the FBI. It was over that quickly. The arrest, the trial, the verdict. Federal charges, because Feguer had crossed state lines during the crime. A conviction. A sentence. Death. Now here is where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. Victor Feguer sat on death row for years. He filed an appeal. It was denied. His legal team argued he was too mentally unwell to stand trial. That argument went nowhere either. His lawyers, alongside Iowa's Governor Harold Hughes, who personally opposed capital punishment, contacted President John F. Kennedy and asked for clemency. Kennedy reviewed the case. He read about Edward Bartles. He read about the cornfield in Illinois and the single shot to the head and the family left behind. Kennedy denied the request. The date was set. March 15, 1963. Victor Harry Feguer was going to hang. The night before his execution, a prison guard noted something unexpected. Feguer was calm, cooperative, resigned, but not in the way of a broken man. More like a man who had finally decided something. He spent the night in an all-night vigil with a Roman Catholic priest. He had become deeply religious during his time on death row. Whatever transformation had taken place in him inside those prison walls, it was real enough that the people around him could see it. When morning came, he was given a new suit to wear for his execution. And then he was asked about his final meal. Now, if you are enjoying this story, take 3 seconds right now and hit the like button. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to this channel. Subscribe if you have not already, and drop a comment below telling me what you think of this story so far. Genuinely, I want to know. Now let us keep going. When death row inmates are asked about their last meal, the answers tend to be large, elaborate, a final indulgence. John Wayne Gacy ordered fried chicken and strawberries. Gary Carl Simmons Jr. reportedly ordered enough food to feed a small family. Victor Feguer asked for one olive. A single olive, with the pit still inside it. The guards were confused. They asked him if he wanted anything else. He said no, just the olive. And then he told them why. He said he hoped that when they buried him, the olive pit would be in his pocket. And that one day, an olive tree would grow from his grave. As a sign of peace. Let that sit for a moment. A man convicted of kidnapping and murder. A man who had taken a life in cold blood. A man who had lied, manipulated, and left a family without a husband and a father. Sitting in a prison cell on the last morning of his life, asking for a single olive because he wanted something living to grow from where he was buried. He wanted his grave to produce peace. On March 15, 1963, Victor Harry Feguer was hanged at the Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison, Iowa. He was 28 years old. He did not make a final statement at the gallows. But the words he had spoken the night before, the ones about the olive tree, had already traveled through the prison. After his death, guards found the olive pit in the pocket of his suit. He had kept it. Right up until the end, he had held on to that pit like it meant something. Like planting something peaceful after a life of destruction was the only thing left he could do. Victor Feguer was also, though nobody knew it at the time, the last person to be federally executed in the United States before a moratorium on the death penalty paused executions across the country. The next federal execution would not happen for nearly 40 years, when Timothy McVeigh was put to death in 2001 for the Oklahoma City bombing. Feguer died at the end of an era, and in the strange, poetic way that history sometimes works, he left a symbol behind, not of the violence he had committed, but of the peace he had never quite managed to offer while he was alive. There is no clean resolution to a story like this. Edward Bartles deserved to live. His family deserved to keep him. Nothing Victor Feguer did in his final hours changes that. Nothing he planted or hoped for erases what he took. But there is something about a man who lived with such disregard for life choosing, at the very end, to leave a seed behind. To ask the earth to turn his burial place into something that grows and breathes and stands for the opposite of everything he did. Was it guilt? Was it faith? Was it the kind of clarity that only comes when there is no time left to pretend? Nobody alive can answer that. The pit went into the ground with him. Whether an olive tree ever grew from that unmarked grave in Fort Madison, Iowa, nobody has confirmed. But the image of it stays with you. A single olive, a man in a new suit, a pit in a pocket, and the quiet, desperate hope that something beautiful might still come from where he fell. Thank you for watching this one all the way to the end. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss what we put out next on Epic Stories. Leave a comment and tell me what you think. Did Victor Feguer deserve any peace at the end? Or does what he did erase all of that? I want to read your thoughts. Share this with someone today. These stories deserve to travel. See you in the next one.